Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Gonna talk with Chris today, and we're gonna be foreign policy experts, of course. Basically, giving our fully expert thoughts on foreign policy issues. As you can give the see in the description there, I'm gonna talk about basically stuff to do with Syria and Yemen and Israel Palestine. I thought. I don't know if you've heard about all of these things recently, Chris, but I was hearing a lot recently about this sort of progressive infighting with the TYT or Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian at the Young Turks, intellectually shitting all over the journalist Aaron Mate, who I like and is super anti-war and has been one of those people saying that the OPCW report on chemical what the Assad supposedly using chemical weapons to attack his own people in Syria didn't actually happen, and the people who originally made that report themselves said that before they were fired from the organization. I think it's something like that. And the TYT people are kind of doing this like Russiagating shit, like saying, "Oh, he's an Assad puppet, he's a Putin puppet," and shit like that. And Assad's a brutal dictator. Same sort of thing they did to people like Tulsi Gabbard. And then, of course, you and I were talking about Scott Horton before we started this, and he's one of many people, and I've heard from a lot of like lefty anti-war people, and even more like libertarian leaning anti-war people like Scott Horton and Dave Smith too, about how there's this genocide that's being carried out in Yemen by Saudi Arabia, and America is selling them weapons for it. And then also there was this recent stuff about Israel and Palestine in the news, and I'm always just endlessly confused by this particular issue, Israel and Palestine, and it's so politically polarizing too. Like lefties are always pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, and conservatives are always pro-Israel and anti-Palestine. I think I might have just said that the wrong way around, but
No, I know what you mean though.
And then I just think again, like I was obviously joking. We're just at the start. We're just talking out of our asses here, but it seems to me like as is almost always the case, it's more complex than people make it out to be. Like even the super pro-Palestine people acknowledge that Palestine is run by Hamas, which is a terrorist group, and but it seems like according to what probably both of us have heard, that America funds Israel or sells them weapons, and they have like way better technology and weapons than Palestine, and they're like lefties and libertarians, generally speaking, seem to see Palestinians as more like the victims, and then more right-leaning people, and even more like, I don't know what you would call it, maybe politically centrist people like Sam Harris, I know, is kind of like pro-Israel and anti-Palestine in a way. And I think it's also interesting that there's this accusation of anti-Semitism if you're like pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, and a lot of journalists have lost their jobs and people like that. Like one that I heard about that you probably also heard about is Cornel West getting denied tenure at Harvard because he said something that was like pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, like they're committing genocide and stuff like that. So yeah, basically there are a lot of fascinating and complex issues going on in all of these different situations. So what do you think about whatever one of those issues you want to start with? Yeah, we can go with them in order that they're listed, or whatever you want to start with.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said these are very complex. Like we could spend the whole 2 hours on fucking just Palestine and Israel
Yeah,
and how far back that goes, and depending on who you listen to, um, yeah, I agree. It's very political and very like right versus left. I would say more like if you're right wing, like a Ben Shapiro, well, he's obviously Jewish, so we know what side he's on. But yeah, and left people Palestine. Um,
Isn't he super anti-Palestine, Ben Shapiro?
oh yeah, well, I
Yeah.
think you would have
He
to
was
be,
like
right?
he was like he was like dragged on Twitter forever for some like tweets that he said that was like really racist about Palestinians or something, like I don't know, something like all Arabs live in their own shit or something like that, and then he corrected himself later apparently and said no, sorry, just Palestinians, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I remember a while back I did see a lot of tweets against Hamas. I know he's not a big fan of Hamas, and I
Okay.
think that
Yeah.
like all yeah, these are complex issues. I would say that he's probably not. He has nothing against 90% of the pro peaceful Palestinians. It's like
Yeah.
the 10%
Well,
of the extremists that throw
and
bombs at Israel that he probably has issues with.
and also, to be fair too, people like particularly lefties who hate Ben Shapiro always bring up those tweets, and they happened like a decade ago or some shit. So it's kind of like cancel culture-y shit. So I mean, I certainly have a million criticisms of Ben Shapiro, but to
Yeah.
focus on that is a little disingenuous almost.
Yeah, and to me, I'm kind of like, not who cares what Ben Shapiro has to say, but it's just like it's so blatant obvious to me what side Ben, because this is very tribal, right? And him being obviously a Orthodox Jew, we know what side he's on, right? So I just like, I don't know. And again, Ben is the type of person that I would like. He's a devout Jew. He wears the yarmulke and everything. Like this guy is in a religious mindset that and you're not gonna break out of. I do think because Bibi Netanyahu is out now, right? And I
Oh, I
think,
didn't know that.
yeah, I thought I heard that he's no longer running the show there.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I should fact check myself that.
I'm gonna look that up right now.
Yeah, look that up. I'll
Also,
carry on. But anyway, what I was going to say is I think that changes the landscape of everything that goes on in Israel. Positive or negative, who knows? I guess time will tell on that. Because I still think you're going to have extremists on that are pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel. Yeah, if you're from Palestine, you're going to obviously be pro-Palestine.
yeah. It says here that in 2021, Naftali Bennett became Prime Minister of Israel.
2021, yeah. So Netanyahu is out, and he's like, I want to say he's been running the show there for like 10 years now, or for a while. And
also, like way before Netanyahu was out.
No, Bibi was running the show for 10. Like, I think I don't know. Do you have it up there? How long he's been prime minister for, or whatever?
Yeah, it said in 2021.
No. That's the new guy. I mean, the old guy, Netanyahu.
Oh, what, Netanyahu?
Yeah, because he's
Like
been
when he first became prime minister.
Yeah. When did he first become prime minister?
Okay. Let's see.
Because I think he's been in power since the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. What the fuck? I had the
hugest. Yeah, it feels like it's been a while. Yeah, 1996.
Yeah, so this guy's been around forever, right? So like maybe fresh ideas will. I mean, again, there's going to be the fringe Hamas, and there's going to be those that are still going to have their car bombs and all that kind of stuff. I just it's such a hot region just because like all three branches of the biggest religions on the world, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they all stem from that area of the world, right? And they all want their piece of the pie, and they all and this is like I heard somebody talking on the podcast the other day that was talking, I forget where, but pretty much people that live in Israel and people that live in Palestine, their thought is this is my land, this is my country, I'm not fucking leaving at all. You'd have to kill even if you killed all my family members, I'm still staying. Like, if you want to talk about the biggest digging in of the heels of the entire planet Earth's, recorded history so far, that area is going to probably be on the top of the list, I would say, right? So, yeah, as far as the Young Turks go, man, I'm because I think they've just been like so on the downslide ever since. I don't know if you've been following with the Jimmy Dore stuff too.
Yeah, the same kind of thing as with Aaron Mate. Really, they're like basically same as with Aaron Mate. They're like smearing him and calling him a right winger and shit like that. Did you see one or two of Jimmy Dore's videos where he was showing clips of Cenk Uygur saying supportive things about Jimmy Dore, specifically in relation to Assad and Syria from like a few years ago, and then switch to more recently where he's calling him out and saying he's a right winger?
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that. I didn't actually. I'm not gonna lie. I just saw, because I follow Jimmy on YouTube and Twitter and shit like that, and I just see like the tweets and the headlines of like Young Turks and Cenk Uygur or Anna Kaspersian said this, which she's kind of hot for some reason. I don't know.
She is. I think so too. Yeah. Just like we talked when we talked about Candace Owens before. Her bad ideas doesn't mean she's not hot.
Yeah, exactly. And she's one of the she's the exact same as Candace to me for some reason. She's like
the left-wing version.
Or like AOC, you know what I mean? These girls
are
I love the fieriness about them, I think. That's what's like, that's what makes them sexy, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Passionate women could be that way, yeah.
Yeah, even if they're passionate about, the wrong things. It doesn't it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the Young Turks have, I don't know. I've never been a follower of the Young Turks. I subscribe to their YouTube channel, and I think I follow Chunk and her on Twitter.
I like how you called him Chunk.
Yeah. Because me and my cousin always, we always text Chunk whenever he says something stupid or whatever, right?
Funny.
But yeah, I just attacking journalism is one thing. I think, like, CNN and Fox, sure, go nuts, but like independent journalists, unless they're blatantly wrong on some issues, I don't know. And
dude, did you see yesterday I saw a few videos. I think it was Kyle Kalinske and Crystal and Sager's new YouTube channel, Breaking Points. They both made videos about how U.S. courts both recently declared that Fox News and MSNBC are not actually news and should not be taken seriously because someone took something hyperbolic that Rachel Maddow said seriously and sued MSNBC for it in court. And then the exact same thing happened with Tucker Carlson and Fox News. So I think that's just so hilarious because it's true. Like the mainstream TV news, that's entertainment. It's not news.
Yeah, no, it's like opinions. Like they're given their own spin. Like Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson will just either give their spin left or right to attract or to keep their base happy and to attract more people so they can just ultimately sell ads, right? But
and I don't remember specifically what it was, but with Rachel Maddow, it was something about how someone, I forget who it was about, but she said someone is literally controlled by Putin. She said something like that about someone almost verbatim. And then and then it's the opposite end of the spectrum, hyperbolic shit with Tucker Carlson. He was talking about how the FBI was involved in the January 6th stuff with the Trump supporters storming the Capitol.
Yeah. Yeah, she touted Russiagate for like pretty much years, man. And yeah, I only watch like Tucker sometimes just comes up in YouTube clips, mostly because other people talk about him, like David Pakman or something like that, right? So I only see those kind of clips, unless he's like got a guest on. I remember when I think it was Glenn Greenwald was on a show once, and I watched like the whole episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's propaganda. It's left and right propaganda pieces. It's sad that they had to like. I don't know if you haven't figured out by this point that this isn't actual news. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've known for like almost 5, maybe even longer than that, years at least, that news like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even here in Canada, CBC, sorry, and like this is just all. Once the internet came into town,
well, you can tell that like CBC has a left-wing bias when you watch it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's
oh dude, yeah, this is only tangentially related, but I just fucking found out earlier today that now Tinder has gone woke too. They have these things where they ask you to do these vibes. So they ask everyone these same series of like 5 questions. Like usually it's something like, what kind of music do you like? Or when you're at a party, do you like to go off by yourself or stay all night? Or just find a quiet place to talk with a few people. And today there was a vibing thing, and it was all about Pride Month. Like, and the questions were options like, are you doing Pride Month? Do you want to be the best, make it the best Pride Month ever? Be the best ally you can be? Be a better ally, or just be yourself? There like wasn't even a good option to choose. Like I couldn't choose. I don't care. Good for those people. Good for them. I don't care.
Yeah, for sure. Corporate virtue signaling happens, every Pride Month, also every kind of Black History Month, every kind of tragic event. And the sad thing is like these corporations are just kowtowing to more sales and profit, and you know what I mean. They actually, it's not like it's not like Tinder puts up a rainbow flag and then donates $50 million towards LGBTQ communities or anything like that, right? They just put up the flag and then they say, hey, see, look, we we're not bigoted, come on.
Exactly.
I do find that funny. I have no, like, the Tinder world to me, because I'm married and a loser, and I haven't dated in like 20 years, but man, can you imagine dating these days? So I find Tinder fascinating. I don't know fuck all about it.
Dude, like especially Tinder, I don't know why, but there's this thing with a lot of dating apps now where it seems like most of the time, if a chick on any of the dating apps has her Instagram and or her Snapchat, it's just her trying to get you to subscribe to her OnlyFans.
Yeah, man, girls pay like their college tuition with that shit now, right? So,
yeah, you can make lots of money from that.
Yeah, you can actually. Like,
I've thought about doing that myself a few times.
Yeah, fuck, if you you guys are younger, so you can. If you can, like, power to you. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I take a more libertarian stance on stuff like that. Like, awesome, as long as obviously you're over 18 and it's like, all legit and shit like that.
Of course. And like in that sort of stuff too, it kind of is like a more libertarian approach to sex work, really, because you're just doing it virtually, and you don't have a pimp or anything, and it's not like there's someone controlling your business. You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way. Yeah, and you're like, I mean, depending on your look and that kind of stuff and what you're going for, you can make a lot of money, right? So I do find Tinder fascinating, though. I think, like, going back to the LGBT thing, and like they're trying to like narrow down your picks or whatever, or those girls that are closest to you or whatever, right?
Yeah, like what if they're what if there's some of the girls who profiles I've seen before? Like it doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while I see a girl with who in her profile description says no liberals or no progressives or some shit like that. So
Oh,
they're
really?
clearly conservative. So like, what if you're a conservative chick on there?
Fuck, man, I'm so old. It's funny, like I come from a generation like you didn't talk about politics at all, right? Like, you know, and now people are putting it in their like in their dating profile. I don't want to.
Dude, people do that for like with super lefty shit sometimes too. It annoys the fuck out of me. Like they'll say BLM in their description on Tinder. Like, why the fuck should I care about that?
Yeah,
If I want to date you or not.
I guess that's like I don't know. I guess you could narrow down your choices though really quick. I mean, as soon as you see those pronouns in the bio, you know, either to move on or send him a message or send her a message, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I think like Tinder in a way, although it's like I've never used it, but I would imagine that it's trying to set you up with like a girl that's not only you can look and pick if you want to choose that girl, but you know, her likes and her kind of moral, you know, like values or whatever are similar to yours so that you got, you know, you could have conversations or whatever. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Back to Yemen.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So it sounds like you heard similar things about that. And that was one of the many instances of, you know, Trump having said some anti-war rhetoric, and then he continued that thing that every president has been doing. Like Bush did it, Obama did it, Trump did it, and now Biden's doing it too, as far as I know anyway, continuing to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia to use in that genocide in Yemen.
Yeah, I think that was like, well, that was one of many Trump's failures is, you know, I think that he pushed an anti-war stance for a bit there. And I mean, he like, if you look at his 4 years, it's not like he was like starting wars in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
Although I think what's disappointing is that like, I think, you know, stuff like Afghanistan didn't end as early as we'd had hoped. And yeah, there was talk about Trump going to go in there and end all wars and put a middle finger to the federal government and release Snowden and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, none of that unfolded, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what actually happened is he just, you know, again, I don't know who says this all the time, but it's as if they set him down. Every president, they say, listen, I know you wanted to end wars and shit like that, but here we have a military industrial complex and, you know, we'll take off your head if you try to even go against that at all. You know, if you want to even keep your wife.
We know you think you're in charge, but sorry.
Yeah, sorry, you're not at all, right? Like, no, we're not going to give you the JFK files. We're not going to tell you about Roswell. You're going to do what we say. And, you know, if you just keep your mouth shut, you know, like I think they said him because like, Trump, what would he have to lose in that situation? He's a millionaire, so it's not like he cares about money, right? I think he would care about reputation because he's kind of self-centered in a way like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as we find out, you know, there's like everything, there's a lot of talk, but hardly any action. Although I do give him kind of credit. It's not like he started a lot of new wars that the U.S. entered. So, I mean, foreign policy, if you think about it, he's way better than Bush that's for sure.
Yeah.
But if you go down the list, man, I would argue that Trump on foreign policy, as far as wars, did a lot better than a lot of other presidents that have taken.
I agree.
Care
it's
of the
just
US.
that it's such a low bar. Like,
yeah, it is a low bar.
He's still responsible for so many deaths, but just like I don't even know what the number would be, but you know, it's like way less than Bush and Obama, but it's still like a lot. And then he still apparently accelerated drone strikes a whole lot too.
Yeah,
and it's complicated. Like with every president seems to do some pro and some anti-war things. Like it seemed like he was at least working towards peace with North Korea and didn't achieve that. And he like moved some troops around, I think maybe in Afghanistan, and like almost pulled them out. And like you said, he didn't start any new wars like Bush and Obama did. But then he increased drone strikes and then wasn't anywhere near as anti-war as he said he was going to be. And then you could say the same thing with Biden. He apparently is trying to de-escalate things. I forget which country it even is. I heard that from Scott Horton, I think, too. But then he's like accelerated drone strikes and continued wars in other countries too.
Yeah, geez, I don't even know if Biden knows what's going on, man. Like that guy is like, every time I see clips of him, he's just like, yeah, he's just, I don't know. He's being held together by his cabinet pretty much. I don't think, and they're just like updating him on what continent he happens to be on at that current time, you know, and what time of day it is and when's lunch and dinner. I honestly, I don't know. After the G5 summit and some of those speeches, like I think Biden is gone, but he's going to toe the line. You're right. He's going to do exactly what Trump and Bush and all those kind of, if the military industrial complex comes to him or the Pentagon or whoever is controlling, you know, all that money that's invested in the Army, the Navy, the, you know, all those branches of government, if they come to him and say, yo, we need to send, you know, 500,000 troops here to Afghanistan to stop such and such and such, to have a big meeting with a bunch of generals. They all have those 600,000 medallions on their pocket and shit like that. Yeah. Biden's going to go, yeah, all right, cool. Let's do it. Right. I can't see him as being cognitively awake enough to know exactly what's going on in, like he doesn't even know what's going on in Chicago, let alone Afghanistan, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, the North Korean thing with Trump, I had that debate and I thought about it. I see that a little bit more as a positive than a negative, even though nothing really happened there, but at least it was some kind of like, you know, it was
no one else even talked about doing so or made even a feigned attempt.
Yeah, and no other American president has stepped foot in North Korea, so that's got to amount for something. I just think that again with Trump, it was a lot of talk, but no actual, you know, action or whatever at the end of the day. Because like, I don't know, man. If he had really ended all wars, and if he had like, you know, pardoned Snowden, and if he had done all these things that like the right wanted him to do, like, yeah, you know, I don't know. Yeah. Although the January 6th thing happened, and I don't know, it was just all a mess in the end, I think, for him. But yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as like oh shit, what's the word I'm looking for? Not social policy, foreign policy. As far as foreign policy right now, I mean, I know there's a lot going on in the Middle East. I heard that that Russia is thinking about making some moves, but that's always kind of the case with them, I guess. So yeah. I think that the concentration should be China right now. I mean, as far as foreign policy goes, I don't know how we go with the last 2 years, and like not saying we should go over there and threaten them or anything like that, but I don't know. I would have, you know, this virus, COVID started there. Yeah, as far as human rights with the Uyghurs and stuff like that, they haven't been up to, you know.
Did you see that that clip of Jon Stewart on Stephen Colbert's show talking about the lab leak?
Yeah, I did see that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it is funny and good for you.
Maybe a penguin kissed a turtle and coughed in my chili, and then we all got corona.
You know what else is telling about that is Colbert is just like, he's kind of like frozen there for a minute, like, oh shit, he's gonna, I don't know, I get the feeling that like, because we talked about this last time, the lab leak theory and Brett Weinstein a little bit, but yeah, that was such a right-wing talking point at first when I think it was Tom Cotton that first talked about it, and then obviously Trump regurgitated that theory. And then it was like you got banned from Twitter and Facebook and all those platforms if you talked about it. And now it's like the mainstream thought. And John, the brilliant thing about that sketch and how Jon Stewart brought that out is just like it's just so obvious. Like, how could you argue that point? Like, maybe it's in the Wuhan lab named after the same virus.
Maybe it's from the Wuhan novel coronavirus lab.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I did see that clip, and yeah, I think it's telling that Colbert was just like, he gets the coffee and he's like, oh really, tell me this. Like, he didn't that never went through his head at all as the origin of the virus. I don't know.
Yeah it's interesting though, in terms of China. That's one kind of for me kind of similar to the Israel-Palestine topic in a way, in that I just find it endlessly confusing, and it seems so politically polarized too. Like like right wingers are more likely to be anti-China, and left wingers are more likely to apologize for it. Although I've seen lefties say like use anti-China rhetoric as well. I even saw forget what the fuck the guy's name was, but it was a guy who was on Jimmy Dore's show. He was basically saying that, what people are saying about the Uyghurs and concentration camps and all that kind of stuff is either like exaggeration or it's misinformation. And then another big piece of the China topic too is that, there's stuff about for example, recently John Cena apologizing to China in Mandarin, and then basketball players saying pro China things, and China funds a lot of American movies, and then they put some people into those roles. But I think people like I don't know, like Glenn Beck, for example, probably gets kind of carried away with how China is taking over America or some shit like that. So it's another like complex and politically polarizing issue.
Yeah, I can. I know what you're saying. It's not like, I don't think that China would be. Well, it's tough. Would they actually be malicious and they're trying to work up some kind of conspiracy to take over the U.S. and invade them one day? Who knows? But as far as like, there's a lot of money at stake with China now. Now that China's kind of flipped over the last 20 years and gone from like a poor, lower class, very little middle class to a very majority middle class now. Like, I think that movie, that Fast and the Furious 49 or whatever it was, or how many
the ninth one just came out.
Was it the ninth? Okay, I don't know what number they're up to, 50, 100, who knows. But that Fast and the Furious made like 320 million, and 300 million of it was made in China and 20 million was made in the US, right?
Oh yeah, what was it about that? It was something to do with like it getting, I forget what, something happened to do with it being released in China before America, or the other way around. What was it that happened with that?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was released. I know why John Cena had to apologize, but I don't know why it was released before.
Why did John Cena apologize?
Because he had said something about Taiwan, and in China you can't recognize, like, China doesn't like Taiwan because it's a separate state.
Oh, right.
So they don't. It's like kind of like talking about Hong Kong, or it's like talking about South Korea in North Korea or whatever. So he had to go on there. Since there's so much money invested in these kind of movies, he had to go on there and apologize. Kudos to him though for, like, I don't know if you saw that clip, man, but he fucking spouted Mandarin like it was like his second language. It was nuts.
I just saw like a brief clip of it, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I like right or left, or however you see that. I mean, I'm neither, but I see that as a sellout move for sure. Yeah, especially knowing the market. But I think you're like, going back to China, and retaliation, like I was saying earlier, like I said, I don't think we should retaliate, sending the troops or whatever, but I think the market should somehow decide some of that stuff. Like here in Canada, we should definitely be making more stuff than we buy from China, or same with the US. The US, they get like a whole bunch of shit manufactured over there and then it's shipped in containers over. So yeah, they should bring more of that, back to the main. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the stuff that's going on with China is connected to Russia, and then it's connected to the Middle East conflicts too, because China and Russia are contesting each other for control of territory in the Middle East, apparently. So, and then America has its own interests, and like America doesn't want to be allies of Russia, but they don't want to be allies of China either. And then of course they're like funding Israel, but I don't even know what China or Russia's positions are on like Israel and Palestine. But that's why like all of this shit is so fucking complex.
Yeah, it is. And the underlying thing that connects all the dots and all that is that there's a lot of money to be made and involved in just selling weapons, right? So like if Russia's thinking about, taking more of Ukraine over or whatever, even if there's no violence or no war, even if they're just like firing warning shots and just moving troops closer to the, they're going to be buying weapons from somewhere. And yeah, the U.S. manufactures a lot of these guns and General Dynamics, all those like the contracts are there's a lot of money involved. So I don't know. It's like I think Steven Pinker. You know who Steven Pinker is.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, it's like Better Angels of Our Nature. Did you ever read that book?
Yeah, I think I did.
Anyway, the main thesis of the book is like, we're getting less violent over time, and there's less wars, and even though we do spike every once in a while, we hit a Gulf War and we hit a Vietnam War, and those things happen. Eventually, if you look at mankind over a lengthy period of time, it's going down and down and down. And a lot of like foreign policy, and I think like that is just like showing how big of a dick you have. You know what I mean? Like buying expensive cars. It's like if Russia, like there's been wars like Syria and Yemen, and Afghanistan and that kind of stuff. But compared to like 10, 20, 30 years ago, there's way less wars than there was. And a lot of this is just posturing from a lot of countries, right? So if they end up making moves, though, that's a different story. And I do worry that, like, not worry, but it's just like it would be interesting if, like, something happened and there was a war that broke out. I mean, like, would the U.S. step in and being involved? What would Canada's role be in that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sadly, even though I'm Canadian, I don't actually know as much about Canada's role in all of this. Like, what do you know about it?
Yeah, well, we don't have much of a role. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we have a limited army. We do manufacture and ship out, tanks and guns and that kind of stuff.
I think
I'm in London here.
My friend who's in the Canadian military, I think he was briefly in Germany and then briefly in Russia. Like, so Canada's military bases there just like the US does, but obviously we have a way smaller military, and like a military that makes more sense to have in terms of its size.
Yeah, I see Canada has always been, and yeah, you're right. We have military in Russia. We have military in Afghanistan. We've had troops, pretty much where the U.S. has had troops. We're like always the guys that come in and just give a little bit of a hand here and there. We're never really like leading the charge at all. Same with like World War II. If you look at our record there, with Dieppe and that kind of stuff, or D-Day. We just showed up with whatever troops we had and, helped out the Allies and, that kind of stuff. We're never like known for like having a massive army. Like North Korea, they're known for being poor and having the other half of it is having an army, a massive army, right? So
yeah, exactly.
that's not Canada at all. We're more of like and that yeah, that just happens. Like I think that goes with like Australia, New Zealand, and all these other British colonies. Like New Zealand doesn't have a massive army at all. Australia, anybody could probably take them over. Sorry to any Australia or New Zealand listeners. You know what I mean? I just feel like these British colonies have never been really known for like having supreme armies. But
yeah, for sure.
the US obviously is like the strongest. I would say, I don't know. It's tough to say. Does China have a bigger military? Or do they have more power? Right? Yeah, who knows? I mean, they all have nuclear weapons, so like they could all end it at just a snap of a finger if they really wanted to. But
Does Canada have nuclear weapons?
No, we don't have any
No?
nuclear weapons. No.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't even.
Yeah, that's another very
Not that I know of. Unless Trudeau's like hiding some or something.
Yeah, that's another complex topic too, because they're like the fact that nuclear weapons even exist is so fucked up. But then I don't know how much there is to that argument that I've seen people make about how even though nuclear weapons even existing is super fucked up, everyone shouldn't get rid of all of them because some people having some of them is what prevents anyone from using them because they know that they'll be attacked in retaliation. I think I kind of have like more of the idea that they should, if it were like a realistic possibility, there should just not be nuclear weapons and people should not be able to do that kind of shit to each other.
Yeah. In a perfect utopia, I totally agree with you. Unfortunately, the cat's already out of the bag. Kind of like guns, right? Like once the guns are out there, it's hard to like take.
Yeah, that's true.
Same with nuclear weapons.
I certainly don't make that same sort of argument against guns. I think like nuclear weapons or guns times a million or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. But like, I think the thinking is like, well, the Russians have nuclear weapons. Are they going to get rid of their nuclear weapons? No.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say this though. I mean, I know the Cold War, and there's been a few mishaps where like people have accidentally stepped on the trigger button for nuclear weapons. But if you look at like human beings' history of nuclear weapons, other than obviously what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki being horrible, but that's it, man. That was in the 1940s, 50s, I believe. But it's not like we've been setting off nuclear weapons in the 70s and 80s, and it's not like the U.S. has ever been hit with a nuclear weapon. Like our track record for nuclear weapons, and Pinker talks about this a little bit too in his book. Like if you look at the surplus of like nuclear weapons from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s during the Cold War versus today, we've gotten rid of a lot of those nuclear weapons. It's down to like a bare bones minimum of what each country has, and yeah, it is a good thing, but I don't think it will ever go away to be zero. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that sadly might be true.
Yeah. Just because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see a way out of it either.
Unless aliens invade us, that's the only way. And the only reason I say that is
to work in comic books and movies.
Well, you would need some, and I know I'm like joking there, but I'm kind of being semi-serious. You would need some kind of unifying thing, historical crazy thing in human history, right? Like a fucking alien showing up with like crazy guns in order for like China and the US and Britain to work together to like use those and become like a human army versus like aliens. Do you know what I mean? That would be the only way it would happen, because we're ultimately tribal and like that. And if the tribe is like human beings versus like some other animal or creature or alien, right, we're going to obviously side with human beings.
That's interesting too. Like I'm thinking of examples in fiction of that, like in the Watchmen comic, but or the graphic novel, but not the movie. The that supervillain, super genius, ends the Cold War by doing this sort of thing where he makes it seem like there's an alien invasion by this like massive squid monster thing, and so that makes humans end the Cold War to unite against the attack of the aliens. And I think it's interesting too because because I've been reading the Ender's Game series of books, and it's interesting because once the aliens are defeated, as the series progresses, in the characters on Earth, because there are two series, because the main character Ender goes to other planets after the first book, and then the characters who were in battle school with him, that's a whole other series that I've been reading, and it tells you what happens on Earth. And as soon as they defeat the aliens, people go back into war with each other and trying to control Earth. So it kind of like speaks to that tribal thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's like one of those social scientist things that like, yeah, it's ingrained in our like DNA. We're always like the Dunbar number, for example, right? For hundreds of thousands of years, we only lived with, we were very tribal. We fought against each other a lot. We, yeah,
Yeah.
we, yeah, most people didn't even live to their 30s.
When was that?
Well, I'm talking like maybe 1700s or 1600s.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm talking a long time ago.
Dude, didn't you read haven't you read Chris Ryan's books, like Sex at Dawn and Civilized to Death, in which he talks about how it's kind of like a common misconception?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, because the babies are dying really young, so that brings down the age. You're right.
Like the people still always had the same lifespan. I think he says, like even in hunter gatherers, they could still potentially live to their 70s or 80s, but it was a harder life, so more people died more easily. So most people did not live that long, and I think that's what he said the reason is.
Yeah. No. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what like. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I think I was thinking that because we're talking about tribalness and that kind of stuff, and yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you know what I want to ask you? Carl Jung. That guy.
Oh yeah. I was just reading a book of his today. Some guy on Twitter doesn't like my assessment that his work is very fascinating, but it's not scientific. It's all like he talks in the introduction of his book that I read, which is one of his most famous books, called Psychological Types, or The Psychology of Individuation. He says in the introduction that he's not using the data that was available at the time. He's using his empirical analysis of his own anecdotal experiences with regular people and patients, and then also basically doing analyses of different historical intellectuals and thinkers, and examining various philosophers and other people who did psychology, like Freud and whatnot. So that's why I said this is philosophy. It's fascinating speculation about a lot of interesting philosophical and religious ideas, and then adding them to human psychology. So it doesn't necessarily actually tell you anything about human psychology, but it's still very valuable and fascinating, because I like philosophy more than science anyway. I like the intellectual examination of ideas and curiosity and that sort of thing. But people are mad about me saying that's not scientific.
That's interesting. The only reason I bring him up is because I don't know fuck all about him. I know about him because everybody talks about him in podcasts and that kind of stuff, but I've never gone down the Carl Jung rabbit hole. So,
well, what most people know, like what he's most known for, is kind of like the title of that book, his psychological archetypes, and that's like one of the things that Jordan Peterson became famous for, because he's a Jungian. So he talks about the Jungian archetypes, especially in his one book that I actually like called Maps of Meaning. He talks about those a lot, and like the father figure, the mother figure, the hero, those sort of like classic archetypes. Like the hero, for example, is obviously a really well-known one in the work of Joseph Campbell, for example, right? The hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you see that archetype throughout history, and like, Jesus could be an example of that. Muhammad could be an example of that. Going back to religion, there's always the hero, and even like Star Wars, man, Luke Skywalker and Batman, and all those Marvel comics. There's always the hero versus the villain, the good versus evil, the yin, the yang, the black and white, the one, the zero, the whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, he's always been one of those guys, and Peterson talks about him a lot because of the archetype, but Carl Jung has always been one of those guys that I was like, oh, should I go down the rabbit hole and read some of his work?
Yeah, it's very interesting to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of it, because it's not scientific, some of it gets into like speculation and generalizations, but I mean, it comes from very interesting examinations of interesting thinkers like Nietzsche and Freud and a whole bunch of other scientists and philosophers.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, I'll add it to the list. I'm gonna backtrack for a second here. Did you see the Joe Rogan with Brett Weinstein, the new one that he was on, the Emergency podcast?
Oh yeah, actually, I thought of that earlier and I forgot to mention that too. Yeah, I was gonna ask if you saw that. They were mostly talking about. So yeah, I did watch it. It was mostly them talking about this drug called Ivermectin, I think, right? And about how apparently, contrary to what seems like a popular, like almost consensus mainstream opinion, there have been a lot of studies done that have showed how effective this medication can be for treating COVID, and it's like a cheap one because it hasn't been patented, and drug companies say that it has no use whatsoever, but they want to kind of like follow that model of the particular drug and change it slightly so they can sell it as something different and make a whole bunch of money. It seems like the theory, according to Brett Weinstein, and I forget what that other doctor's name was. Is that kind of what they were talking about, if I remember?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it exactly, okay. Dude. Ivermectin. Interesting results with like Mexico, and what was the other one they mentioned? India. Like they eradicated pretty much COVID just by taking ivermectin, and a lot of people were saying like, oh, it's because of vaccines, but they were only vaccinating like 2 to 5% of their population at the time. And I don't know if you remember, there was a whole bunch of talk like India was a graveyard, and you could see the smoke from space because they were burning so many dead bodies. But the headlines were like atrocious for like a week or two with India, and then it just started plummeting. And
oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, one of these doctors was saying one of the reasons is because they subscribed ivermectin. And I think I mentioned this in the Brett, or when we talked about the lab leak theory before, because somebody else said this on a podcast. I don't know. I listen to so much garbage, man. I fucking in one ear out the other. But somebody was saying that like because hydroxychloroquine. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was another one that was a hot topic, and that one is like, big X because Trump said it first, right? But that was another one that some doctors were using. Like I remember Joe was saying that Brendan Schwab had something done in LA, and the doctor was pretty much like, what political party do you lean? Because I have this hydroxychloroquine if you want to take it, because he had COVID, right? So right. And I've heard other doctors say, yeah, we've used it, and I've heard some wackos like that. I forget her name. There was that black doctor lady that was like making the rounds early in the pandemic as being a conspiracy theorist. Anyway, Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, both with zinc, both shown to have some kind of like positive effects for people that got COVID early on. But I think in order to push all these regulations out of the way for Pfizer and all these companies to get a vaccine created, I think one of the rules, if I remember correctly, was like you couldn't have any other drugs on the market that could, help with this, help cure this. So that's why ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were never kind of like, it was never really talked about as a clear, like, hey, if you get COVID, boom, you should take this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we're finding out now. Well, and again, it's just Brett Weinstein and this doctor. But yeah, if what they say is true and these studies are right, it looks like ivermectin could have been like the cure the whole time, and we just blew it.
Mm-hmm. Or it at least could have made the whole pandemic like a lot better. Like there could have been way less people who died. There could have been people, or at least people could have had way less severe symptoms or something like that, right?
Yeah, and for ivermectin not being, you're right, not a patentable drug. It's been around for 40 years. It's like been used in other kind of curing other diseases. So it's not a huge moneymaker for big pharma, right? And that makes sense to me. Because I think like we were talking about before, like unfortunately we're run by like big pharma and big and the military industrial complex and all these like corporations that are just so beyond us that we can't even, you know what I mean, fathom them. But yeah, big pharma, if there's no profit to be made there, then it's not going to get talked about. You're not going to hear about it in the CBC. You're not going to hear about it at CNN or Fox or whatever, right? And yeah, I don't know. There's been lots of mask dropping with COVID, especially, and the government, and like
that's a good way to say it.
And different, yeah, exactly, and different, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's I don't know. It's like, to me, COVID is like not over, but it's nearing the end point, and as it nears the end point, and as years go on, a year or two or three or four or five, similar to like 9/11, we had no fucking idea what the fuck was going on at first. Everything was up in smoke, and we're like, Jesus, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody fly into here, and then after, we learned it was terrorists. Then we eventually learned that it was Muhammad Atta, and then we heard it. We learned all this, but that took a while to learn, right? Like everything, like a year or two. Eventually, we're gonna go through COVID with a fine-tooth comb, and I don't think it's gonna be pretty, man. Especially like even what we found out so far. So far, what we found out is the lab leak theory. That's the big thing that's leaked. Fauci emails, and this ivermectin thing sounds really interesting as well. I'm not an epidemiologist, and I have no medical degree or background. I'm just spouting off what Joe Rogan had on his podcast, but he did talk to 2 doctors, and I will throw that in my interesting pile, as
exactly.
as like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so like we talked about before, similarly to all of these foreign policy issues, they're like, as
nice.
we talked about many times before.
I like how you can rounded back to that.
Oh yeah,
good segue.
I was gonna say, like, similarly to all of these issues, like when we talked about COVID before, we always talk about how politically polarizing that is too.
Yeah,
and I'm sure, like I haven't seen this happen, but it's virtually a guarantee that Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein and that other doctor have been called like right wingers and shit for talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I just clued into me right now. It seems like the theme for this conversation, and I know this is going on in society in general, but the politicization of everything.
Yeah.
Going back to like Tinder when you brought that up earlier, right? Like now we're talking about politics and Tinder. Now we're talking about everything. Like COVID was hugely political, right? And not at first everybody was scared. They wanted to know what was going on, but as time went on, this just went from like 2 weeks to flatten the curve to like, do you vote Republican or Democrat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And same with like lab leak theory. This is all it's all political, and yeah, it's not good. I mean, I'm not like, I don't know. I kind of want to get out of politics. Not get out of get out of politics, but like the
You're in
government is.
politics, eh?
I like following politics. Like it's like my like keeping up with the Kardashians, right? It's like my junk.
Yeah, me too.
But like, I don't know, man. I'm honestly like, the debate is always like, should I even vote anymore, or should I vote? Right? Should I participate in democracy? But like,
I mostly vote because it makes me feel good. I know that I'm probably not doing that much to affect the outcome, but I like being able to do that, I guess.
yeah.
I understand why some people choose to not vote. I'm not like, I vote, but I also am annoyed by people who, like, people in my family who are, because I have some uber progressives in my family who are all like, if you don't vote, you're wasting your right as a citizen. People fought and died for the right to vote. Not everyone has it. I'm like, yeah, that's sure. The right to vote does not mean compulsory voting. Some countries have mandatory voting.
Yeah, that's true.
In this country, it's optional. So it means you have the option to not vote if you don't want to. So, like, who cares? Unless you like want the person who's voting to vote the way you do, and that shouldn't be your motivation to get someone to vote anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not like participating in like the democracy, or you have no right to complain about government if you didn't make that vote or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Yeah, I mean, again, we do have like almost 40 million people in Canada, so it's like my one little vote, does that really? Yeah. And for me, I'm just like so politically homeless at this point. I don't even know. I voted for everybody, man. I think I said this before. I voted for Trudeau. I voted for Ford. So I both voted for Liberal and Conservative. I voted Green Party last time, and I voted NDP like back when Jack Layton was here. So I voted for every kind of party, and all of them have let me down. Like,
yeah,
they haven't like really although I won't give credit to like Trudeau for like legalizing weed. I think I've said that before.
We always mention that. Yeah,
that was huge.
Like, even if you're not a stoner, it's good. Like, I think it's good for good. I think it's good for, these are a few of my, I talked about this a few times before, but these are a few of my radical libertarian policies or progressive policies, depending on how you look at them. Because I think prostitution and all drugs, every single one of them, should be legalized, taxed, and regulated. The legalizing part is libertarian, but the taxing and regulating them is more progressive, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the tax,
and that includes tons of drugs that I would never want to try.
Yeah, the taxing of drugs, I think that's cool. I'm not too sure about the taxing of a woman's body, though. I think that goes like, I don't know. Well, that wouldn't sit well with feminists.
That's a good point.
That wouldn't sit well with feminists. I don't think you would have a lot of
it's because I forget where it was. It was one of those places like Portugal, I think, maybe, where they've decriminalized or legalized all drugs. I think it's also, I think that might be the place, but it's one of the places that's also legalized or decriminalized drugs, where they've also either legalized or at least decriminalized prostitution, and then that allowed them to have these brothels with security there. So, nothing bad can happen to the women. They can't be abused or anything like that. But that is a good point about, taxing a woman's body. I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, I'm sure there would be some kind of feminist group that would be against that. I mean, like, getting rid of John.
It depends on the type of feminist you are too, right? Because there are pro-sex feminists who are pro-prostitution and sex work, and then there are like anti-sex feminists who are more puritanical and think that prostitution and porn are in every case automatically exploitation. And it's like everything else we were talking about. It's more complex than that.
Yeah, and I think like putting aside the taxation of women, I think that what it ultimately would do is it would get rid of like your pimp, right? Now you're the woman, like it's not illegal for you to solicit yourself. You can pretty much put your ad in the paper and say, "Hey, give me a call," right? Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
reason to have that middleman anymore. So yeah, like I totally agree, man. I'm the same. Decriminalize all drugs, even heroin, even you name it. Kind of exactly like Portugal, and same with prostitution. I think you're doing more harm than good by having government be the overreaching hand and all this, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Back to what I wanted to make one more point about politicization, especially with like Trudeau, because I don't know. Do you remember hearing there's a family here in London, because that's where I live, that got run over by a terrorist? Do you remember hearing that in the news at all?
Oh no, I didn't.
Anyway, yeah, like some guy, like some lunatic ran over, and it fucking happened like 10 minutes down the road. It's actually 6 minutes down the road from my house here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, really close. Anyway, this guy ran over a family of 4, murdered
Holy
them.
shit.
Yeah, murdered them all. Trudeau came to our town like a couple weeks ago, but it was really gross, man. I'm not gonna lie, it was really gross how, like, our city. Obviously, this is like super tragic for everybody, but he like came here, and him, Aaron O'Toole, like all the leaders of every party, the NDP guy, the even I think the Bloc Québécois guy came. But anyway, they all gave their political speeches, and it was just like, I don't know, it had very little to do with the family here, and a lot more to do with like them trying to position themselves as being like, anyway, it's just it's sad to me. I'm just relating this all into like everything's political these days. It's absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure those politicians took that as an opportunity to virtue signal or say a whole bunch of meaningless platitudes.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. Yeah, everything's political these days. It's sad.
Yeah. Like like we were talking about earlier, it's sad that like that even happens on dating apps sometimes. Like it doesn't always happen, but I hope it doesn't end up being the case that like when you sign up for Tinder or Plenty of Fish or something like that, you have to say what political ideology you follow.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck, man? Who care? Like, why don't you just tell that to people when you're dating them or whatever?
And like, how can you not tell? I mean, like, okay, if I'm on Tinder, which I'm not, but let's say I am, and I'm flipping or whatever, they scrolling left or whatever the thing it is. If you have pronouns in your bio, I know what political party I know
Yeah,
you're voting for.
exactly.
Like, there's no reason, like, you don't have to tell me, right? If you're, I don't know, there's just like, there's ways of knowing this, like who you vote for, unless you're like really, I don't know, unless you're
The
really heterodox.
funny thing is too, I
But
don't
most people
remember
aren't heterodox. They're either one or the other.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't remember if I told you this before, but I follow a lot of other writers on Twitter to support the work of other small time writers like me,
Yep.
and a lot of them have their pronouns in their bio because like artists tend to be left leaning, and
Yep.
it's always been the case every single time that when someone says their pronouns in their bio, it's he, him, or she, her. So it's like male or female, and it's always like a woman who looks like a woman who has female pronouns, or a man who looks like a man and has male pronouns. So like, I could have figured this out. I didn't need to be told this.
Yeah, I know. These people are, I don't know. It's so easy these days. These people are dead giveaways. I see them, like, I see people bicycling or jogging with nobody else around, and they have a mask on.
Yeah, like what
And
the
I'm
hell's the
like,
point of that?
I know you would never vote Republican,
Yeah, exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
like it's great because like one thing I can appreciate about being in Alberta, which is like conservative country, is
Yeah.
that when I go out for walks or bike ride on the trails by my house, if I see people, it's like one person or a group of two people, and none of them are wearing masks because they're outside and very far away from anyone else, because it doesn't make sense to wear a mask if you're very far away from anyone else.
Yeah, the masks outside, I just like, I don't know. And like I see people driving in their car with masks on. I'm like, okay.
What's the point of that?
Yeah, I don't know. But it's I don't know. Although London here is very, it's funny. London used to be, where I live is like, used to be very conservative. We had a conservative radio station. We had like, we're a university town, so there was a lot of conservatives that were professors here. And then it like fucking flipped over the last like 5 years, and now it's a super left town, which is fine. Like whatever. It's just blatant and obvious, like when I see the guy with the mask in the car, I'm like, okay, you would vote NDP, you would vote,
exactly.
You would vote liberal,
and you want everyone to know it.
And you want everybody to know it. I don't see this as being scientifically accurate, because nobody else is in the car with you.
Yeah, it's like that's another thing that happens on dating apps. There's some chicks who are wearing masks in their pictures.
Yeah.
Like, why? You want me to know that you wear a mask? Good for you. I do too. I don't need to have a picture showing everyone that I do.
Yeah. But you would know that they would vote liberal or NDP, right?
Yeah.
And if they fucking had the trifecta of like mask on, pronouns, and like rainbow flag in their bio,
I haven't seen that yet.
No,
that'd be hilarious.
That would be hilarious. But yeah, you would know exactly who they voted for, which is totally fine. It's just you don't need to put like you're progressive or you're conservative in your Tinder profile, because I'm sure like talking to people, you could be able to figure this out in a matter of, I don't know,
pretty quickly for most people, probably.
Yeah, pretty quickly for most people, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the same way, you can probably figure out pretty easily with most people what their gender is and what gender they identify as.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to have the pronouns in the bio that say he, him, her, she.
Mm-hmm. If you have if you have trouble with most people, like with most transgender people, if you just ask them, they'll say, "Oh, I identify as female." Oh, okay. Then I'll refer to you as female. That's fine.
For sure. Yeah, you don't need to put it in your profile. I would just like, the hope would be that you would ask her out on a date and she would say yes, and then you would meet her and ask her on dinner, which, you know what I mean? That conversation would come up.
Yeah.
Not like you would like, I don't know.
Yeah, like I've not yet come across anyone, whether it's like a so-called cisgender person or even like transgender people that I've talked to, who has gotten mad at me about using the wrong pronouns or calling them by the wrong name or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, all good there.
We always end up talking about the wokeness.
Yeah. Well, because I think it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's going away, but it never does, which is like weird to me.
Yeah.
So I think if you talk to most people, they're tired of the wokeness,
mm-hmm.
right? They don't, nobody really cares when they put on a Disney movie for their kid that there's a big, like, now they have like, this was made in a different era, and might like now Peter Pan, when you put them on, it's like you get a big slogan before you put, like, I don't think actually people sit down and like, I just don't think this is making a difference at all. A lot of this is like posturing, I feel, a lot of the wokeness, you know what I mean?
Well, it's like we were talking about that in terms of corporations, right? Like all these corporations are virtue signaling about being woke, but they're not like actually doing anything to help these people who they're promoting in their ads and shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, not to bring up Donald Trump again, but like, I think that was like a big reason why he was like, voted in, is like people are tired of the wokeness. People are tired of the same like establishment, media, government, all these institutions that just failed us during COVID too, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
people were tired of that, and it was like Hillary Clinton or the big middle finger, and they said, okay,
Exactly.
we'll
Yeah.
select the big middle finger because it doesn't matter at this point. Nothing's going to change anyway.
Yep.
So yeah.
It's funny that no one expected Trump to win in 2016, and then he won. And then it seemed like a lot of people were assuming he was going to be reelected. I did too. Like we talked about before, until COVID,
Mhm.
he seemed likely to be reelected, and then he wasn't reelected. And then that led to all this like election fraud shit and the storming of the Capitol and like the QAnon shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit, I was kind of I flipped. I was like the flip. So like the first time, I've always paid attention to politics. Again, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. You know, whatever. I'm not really. Yeah, I'm politically homeless, like I've said before. So, but I watched this thing because again, it's my keeping up with the Kardashians, right? So I watched that 2016, and I just remember like at like around I think it was like 11 o'clock or 10:30. I was like, holy fuck, he's gonna win. I remember like my wife was sleeping on the couch or something. And I was like, hey, this is fucking like he's gonna win. This is fucking insane, right?
Dude, like the same sort of thing happened with me. I remember I was watching what was happening with my mom and one of my friends, and I started saying, "Holy shit, Trump is getting a lot of votes." And
Yeah,
they just kept both going like, "There's no way he's gonna get elected." I'm like, "Holy fuck, he keeps getting more and more votes. He's gonna win, you know. I think he's gonna win. Now don't worry, the world won't explode."
yeah. I know. I was totally blindsided. I thought I would have bet my house on fucking Hillary Clinton winning
Yeah, me too,
2016.
man.
And then I think I talked about this before. That was kind of like I don't know. It was funny. The next day that happened, I remember I was, or maybe it wasn't the next day, but it was a couple days after. But I remember I was working, and I saw an older guy walking down the street. And I'm in Canada here, but I saw an older guy walking down the street with a Trump hat, and this guy, he looked like he just got laid the night before. Like he was the happiest. He was the happiest motherfucker I've ever seen. And I just was thinking at the time, man, like, wow, what I because I was gonna go back to the Matrix too. Like sometimes I'm living in like a simulation, and because weird shit happens like this, like Trump, or like COVID, or like 9/11, or like the blackout here on the East Coast that happened years ago, or like crazy shit always happens during the course of my lifetime, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, when Trump happened, I was just like, and I remember seeing that guy and just like, wow, what the fuck is going on? But then I think I've talked about this before. This is when I kind of was like, all right, I got to figure out what this is all about because I'm not up to that point. I had zero. Like I have a Republican cousin, but like he never really talks politics. But like I had zero understanding of like the right or
Yeah, me neither.
you know
Yeah.
and then yeah, a few months later, boom, then it was Hunter, then it was mixed metal arts, then it was learning about Jonathan Haidt, and then from there it was game over.
Yeah.
But
In a good way.
yeah, it's weird because like I don't know, I know people hate Trump, man, and like I'm not like a fan of his, but in some there's a little, I'm not gonna lie, there's a little slice of me that's kind of grateful he came along, because if he didn't come along, I wouldn't have gone down a rabbit hole that is completely like kind of changed my life, man. I'm not gonna lie, mixed metal arts and reading all those books and learning about Jonathan Haidt, learning about David Sloan Wilson and Kahneman and Tversky and all those books, man. Like going down that rabbit hole for all those years, and I'll listen to all those podcasts, totally informed me in a way that I would have, like, I'm a totally different person than I was 6 years ago.
Dude, totally, man. Like
And
we talked about this before. Like
yeah,
basically mixed mental arts is why I have a YouTube channel and why you and I are talking right now, because you and I met, but like I was inspired to start a YouTube channel by the mixed mental arts chats, the first few that I participated in.
yeah,
And Dusty was the first person who I did a podcast with from mixed mental arts. And and I just learned so much, and it's eventually what got me so interested in like philosophy, and it got me reading more books. And Dusty and I are always talking about what books we're reading, and it's what made me become a philosophy nerd too, because initially I joined the Mixed Mental Arts Facebook group in the first place because I was arguing with James Sullivan on Twitter, who's from Mixed Mental Arts, and he doesn't have it any longer now, but he had a philosophy podcast called James and the Giant Podcast, and he would talk a lot about so-called postmodernism, and I was a huge Jordan Peterson fan then, so I was arguing with him about postmodernism and like social construction and race and gender and things like that. And then I was learning through partially through Mixed Mental Arts, especially once I joined the group and then started joining the chats, that there was more to this so-called postmodernism. And then I eventually realized, oh, Jordan Peterson is like totally wrong about this postmodernism stuff. And then I realized the tribalism around Jordan Peterson, which has like always exists now, that like people, especially more left-wing people, seem to see him as like this evil person, and then more right-leaning people seem to see him as like a genius. And I think I again am like somewhere in the middle. I think he's helped a lot of people. He says some worthwhile stuff. He makes some good points. I like some of his work, like especially his first book. But he doesn't. Now that I've learned more about philosophy through Mixed Mental Arts and through Jordan Peterson in the first place, really, I know that he's not right about everything, and he's not as smart as the way he sometimes is presented. But that's like the same as everyone. There's no one who's like a super genius that's right about everything. That's another thing I learned about Mixed Mental Arts, the myth of genius, right?
That was a huge chapter too, learning about that. Yeah, man, I'm thinking back to that. I do remember you from the chats. The first time I heard about you though was I think you had Adam Hansen on at one point.
Oh yeah, he was one of my first podcasts too.
Yeah, and I remember, I think maybe I watched one of those, but then that's when I think shortly after that, because he had made a post or something like, watch out for Andrew, not watch out for Andrew. Sorry, it was like pay attention to Andrew. This guy's got a podcast or something like that. He had tweeted you or put something up in the Mixed Mental Arts, and then that's when I learned that you had a podcast, and then we started talking because Hunter was doing those chats. Same with Dusty. And then, so I didn't actually know you had a podcast until you had Adam Hansen on. I think I watched him on here.
Cool.
But yeah, it's crazy how that shit, like, in some way, if Donald Trump never happened, you and I wouldn't be talking.
yeah.
It's some kind of like, they always have that meme of the guy pushing like the small domino, and then there's like a big amount of dominoes after that,
Yeah.
So, and I like Jordan Peterson sometimes. I'm the same as you. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not fanboy, but I've read his books. I've met Jordan Peterson in person.
Really?
Yeah, I have a photo with him. This is like early on, like before he went on, because he was on Mixed Mental Arts first before he went on Rogan, right? And shortly after that, he gave a talk here in London, in my hometown at the university here. And it was like it was a $10, $20 donation or some shit like that to the food bank.
Wow.
So I saw it. I got a picture with him, and But anyway,
cool.
I think his daughter's super hot. I'm not going to lie.
She is. She is. For sure, man.
People listening to this are gonna think I'm like the biggest misogynist, but sorry, I think some women are attractive, and I'm gonna mention it.
She is, man.
Yeah, and she's got a really interesting podcast too.
I'm subscribed to her podcast just because she's hot. I usually don't even watch the episodes, but I see in the thumbnails, holy shit, she's hot.
Yeah. No, she has on some good guests from time to time. Like,
sometimes. Yeah.
Like that Ryan Long guy was just on there. I watched that. That was pretty good. I didn't know he was Canadian, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a comedian guy that was known for like YouTube videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of him before.
Oh, if I show you a YouTube clip, you'd be like, "Oh shit, okay, I know who he is."
Oh, okay.
He's like, yeah, just YouTube Brian Long, but yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, all those people, and like, yeah, I remember like that whole thing started, and I was like, I'd listened to Joe for a while until Hunter came on, but I don't know, it was something about Hunter's appearance that day that was just like, yeah, I don't know. And I think what it
Yeah.
was is like he had a great answer for everything, and then he had a great answer
Mhm.
for everything because he had read Thomas Sowell, he had read Kahneman, and everything that Joe would ask, you'd be like, okay, well, yeah, you should hear about, who's the guy that he always talked about? It was fucking Secret of
Jonathan
Our
Knight.
Secret of Our Success
Oh,
author.
shit. I forget. I'm very. Oh, Joe Henrik. Joe
Yeah,
Henrik.
Joe
Yeah,
Henrik.
yeah,
So yeah, he talked about him on the podcast, and I just remember reading all those books. I probably went through and like every book that Hunter mentioned on that Joe Rogan podcast, I probably went through and read. And like
yeah,
stuff like Righteous Mind, I've read twice. So
yeah. I have two actually. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think said before also about how I started listening to Brian Callen's podcast way before then, just because I heard him on Joe Rogan so many times, and I thought, wow, this guy sounds like another like super smart and intellectually curious comedian. I should listen to his podcast too. And that was before it became Mixed Mental Arts. And so then I already knew about Mixed Mental Arts when Hunter went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I thought that was awesome too. And then I was kind of disappointed. I mean, I have no idea about the reasons behind this, to be fair, but he was only on that one time, and I wonder. I mean, I don't see Joe Rogan as like a petty person or anything like that at all. But he did like thoroughly criticize Sam Harris, which he's known for doing, and Rogan is a fan of his, and the it's great how it's hilarious how there's that thing about Hunter making fun of Sam Harris on Twitter and saying that he looks like Ben Stiller and shit like that.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
then positive thing that came about because of that though was that I ended up talking with Sam's bulldog a few times because he participated in some of the Mixed Mental Arts chat. Who's obviously he calls himself Sam Bulldog, so he's a huge Sam Harris fan. I haven't talked to him in a long time, unfortunately, but yeah, we had some interesting conversations about that, integrating some mental or mixed mental arts concepts about how religion is not as evil as Sam Harris says that it is.
Yeah, I've seen you guys comment on each other's stuff on Twitter from time to time. But yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
think that's
I
what.
comment on things that he says that are dumb about religion.
Yeah, and I think like, yeah, like Sam, like I think we talked about this before. Like Sam is like an atheist, which is also that's a religion in itself. Um, but yeah, I think like going back to why Joe had Hunter on is because I think he knew that Hunter was anti-Sam and he wanted to hear not anti-Sam, but he had some like critiques of Sam's work. I think Joe
Yeah.
wanted to, and obviously Brian was probably like, "Yo, you should have this guy on, your show because Hunter was really good at like absorbing all the good material out of all those books, and then he was able to regurgitate it all as if he had just read the book the night before,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why he never made it on there again, but
It
yeah.
would have been. It was. I partially found it disappointing because the ultimate like coolest thing that could have happened would have been a debate between Sam Harris and Hunter Motz. But Sam Harris probably wouldn't have agreed to it because Hunter was making fun of him. But that would have been so interesting because he would have had like the best counters to some of Sam Harris's super extreme ideas about the supposed dangers of religion, which I think that exist, but he exaggerates the fuck out of them.
Yeah, you're right. I think yeah, well, Sam would have been like, who the hell's this Hunter guy? You know what I mean? And he's probably like, I don't know, like Sam's probably reserved himself to debate with like Eric Weinstein or something like that, but not like a guy that's, I don't know, like Hunter's really, he's only known for knowing Brian really, and having, he did write that book, but yeah, he, I don't know, I'm sure Sam has like kind of like a bar for like who he'll debate or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Debates was making me think. Did you hear about this?
And at that time, remember, like, if I remember correctly, a lot of this has to do with Jonathan Haidt, right? A lot of Hunter's points.
Yeah, Jonathan Haidt. I think it was in The Righteous Mind, he makes specific criticisms about militant atheists like Sam Harris, right?
That's right. And I think over time, actually, though, Sam has been more, because I remember a podcast that Haidt was on. I think it was like a second time on Sam's podcast, but they were way more like friendly, and he was way more open to Haidt's kind of ideas or whatever. So yeah, there was a time though where I feel like Haidt and Sam Harris just didn't meet eye to eye. You know what I mean? Like not that it was like they were conflict or whatever, but they just didn't agree on fundamental things. Hunter would also agree with that, but yeah, but now it would be like, you know what I mean? What I'm getting at is that like I think Sam Harris has not changed his mind in a way, but he's, you know what I mean? I think that relationship has kind of improved over time.
You could say that partially because of Jordan Peterson, because they were part of this like intellectual dark web super group thing, right?
Yeah, that's true. IDW or whatever the hell it was called.
Yeah.
I
just that's true. He is willing to talk to people like that. You're talking about the debates was just making me think of. Did you hear about this dumb childish debate shit between Steven Crowder and Sam Seder?
I heard about it. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what the result or the outcome was. What I gather from is didn't Crowder challenge Sam Seder to a debate and he turned it down?
I think it was the other way around.
Okay.
Or I mean, there are conflicting stories, and I've wasted time looking at so many people's videos about this because it's so childish. But like you said, it's like the Keeping Up with the Kardashians shit. Yeah. And it's like, so Sam Seder, I don't like either of them really. Like I used to think Crowder was funny, but I think he's become like a super pro Trump right wing grifter in the same way that I always thought that Sam Seder was like a super uber lefty grifter. But apparently he challenged Steven Crowder to a debate, and he's done that many times on his show. And he's done that because apparently, I forget when exactly, but a few years or so, he was asked by Politicon to do a debate with Steven Crowder, and they said that Steven Crowder agreed to it, and then they told him that he backed out of it. And so this other guy, I forget what his fucking... Oh, yeah, Ethan something on the H3 podcast, which I don't really follow, but is super popular. But he doesn't really talk about politics much.
Yeah, but that guy's he's a known podcaster, I think. Fuck, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Steven Crowder agreed to a debate with that guy because they had some sort of feud on Twitter about some COVID shit, I think. And he wanted to have a debate with him. And then, so Ethan secretly brought Sam Seder on and ambushed him, like at the start of the debate. And then if you watch the clip of that debate, I was commenting on it when Dusty shared it on Mixed Mental Arts. I said this is like a sequel to that Dave Rubin debate between Candace Owens and Blair White. It's a complete clusterfuck and like a mixture of face palming and unintentional comedy because they're just like yelling insults at each other, especially Crowder too. He's saying that like Cedar takes advantage of disabled women and shit like that. And then Sam Cedar, like after Steven Crowder rage quit, he was criticizing him because one of the things that Steven Crowder said during that exchange was, "You only have 1 million subscribers. Why would I debate you?" And then he and other people pointed out that he does that segment, Change My Mind, where he goes and talks to random college students. But but he says that he never actually agreed to Politicon through Politicon to abate him. So then Sam Cedar and other people are assuming that he's lying. But an interesting point that I saw from two, and one of them was a lefty, David Pakman. So this makes me give more merit to it because he said that. He said something like how Politicon does lie to people sometimes. Like they'll say, we want to set up this debate in the hopes that all of the parties will agree to it, and they'll just assume that they will to make people more likely to agree to it. So even he, who like would normally be on the side of Sam Cedar, probably said something like, it could be the case that Steven Crowder actually never did agree to this debate, and that could be the cause of all this bullshit. Like Sam Cedar thinks that Steven Crowder is lying, but he's actually not lying, but he was still being like a childish dickhead to Sam Cedar in that debate where he, to be fair, ambushed him. So it's like, it's funny because like we've been talking about this whole time, it's so politically polarizing too, because a lot of the lefties think that Sam Cedar destroyed him and Steven Crowder is just awful. And then you can watch like right-wing videos by right-wingers like Tim Pool, for example, saying that Steven Crowder destroyed him. He was such the victim here. But then also I've seen lefties make their own videos criticizing Crowder, where a few of them have even played clips from other right-wingers criticizing Steven Crowder for not debating Sam Cedar, like that super right-wing guy, Jesse Lee Peterson. He apparently made a video calling out Crowder and called him, "Bait 'em all! Don't be a bait 'em all! Just debate him, Crowder!" This whole thing is so hilarious and childish.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I follow a lot of those guys on Twitter. Like I follow Pacman and I follow Crowder. Although I don't see Crowder much in my feed anymore, but I think he got canceled for a bit, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
I don't know. Those I've seen those clips though. Those like when he debates those like people and he's sitting in like a chair with a mug.
Yeah, I like those actually. That's like the only type of Crowder thing that I still like.
Yeah, but I get the argument because to me those are probably heavily edited, right? Like he probably sits down there for a few hours and has multiple people on, but you'll see like one or two people, and it's usually one or two people that are just like he definitely doesn't agree with at all, and he can make some solid points to make him look great. Or it's like, yeah, it's just an idiot or something like that, right? Or somebody that just, I don't know. It's never somebody that agrees with him that you see those clips that he sits down with. So the argument that why would he not debate him, because he's willing to debate anybody just by doing these other videos, by sitting down and prove me wrong or whatever the fuck they're called. What are they called?
I think they're called
not prove me wrong. It's like change my mind.
Yeah, change my mind. Yeah,
change my mind. Sorry. Yeah, so like, people are saying like, yeah, he's willing to debate on changing my mind. Why wouldn't he be willing to debate Sam Cedar? I don't know. Yeah. Well, a lot of this is high school to me, though.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, which is like hilarious because I was listening to Bridget Fedesi. Do you know who she is?
Oh yeah, I follow her. I'm subscribed to her Dumpster Fire.
Yeah, I was listening to her podcast today because she had on Justin Amash on, who's do you know who that guy is?
He's like a libertarian guy.
Yeah, that's right. So he used to be in the Senate though for like a decade as a Republican, and then he switched the last couple of years and went over and he became like a. But anyway, what I'm getting at is like he pretty much boiled down his whole like hour-long podcast with her that the Senate is pretty much like high school. You have these people over here that are Democrats and they get along with their constituents in their little corner, and then you have, it's kind of like the jocks and the skids and like the artsy, like it's the same shit except for it's like a grown-up version of that, a 2.0 version of that.
I
But
remember when I was in high school, I was part of a group that people called the box people because there were these like giant rectangular containers that are like 4 or 5 feet off the ground that they store equipment in for the gym or something like that, and they had that up in the hallway by where people have lunch in the library at our school. So I would hang out with my friends around there at lunchtime. So they called us the box people.
right on.
Yeah,
I was
that's
both.
the only reason.
I dabbled, but I had two tribes, man. There were jocks. I played basketball in high school, so I was like into hip hop, and I was playing basketball, and I also, but since I played guitar, I was in the arts, and all the skids, which are like the people that smoke cigarettes and play guitar, and like were in the arts,
Oh,
and like
okay. I
and
didn't even know what that meant actually.
and
So I'm
and
glad you
drama
said
club, or I know I'm aging myself right here, but like I would do both. Like the people, like the jocks would make fun of the skids, the people that were like in the arts or like drama club or whatever like that. And then the drama club people, it's very tribal again, like, Democrats, Republicans or whatever, Yankees and Blue Jays. But yeah, I would do both. I've always been like non-tribal. I did that in high school, man. I was on the basketball team, so I was in with the jocks. I knew them all. And then I was like in school plays, and I also sang in like, you know, uh,
That's cool.
yeah, like whatever we had, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So I was both, but yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I became of course, I'm still tribal in some ways because everyone's tribal, but I try to be like anti-tribal, and I didn't get that way until I stopped becoming a militant atheist after learning about like Jonathan Haidt's and everyone else's ideas, similar ideas from mixed mental arts. So I was still tribal in that I was like a super hardcore religious militant atheist to the fact that I'm generally not like I generally don't behave angrily toward people, but I would get super like bitchy about religion.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, like I was not knowing what I was doing at the time though. I'm not like tooting my own horn and saying, oh, I was fucking friends with jocks and skids, and just because like, I don't know. I've been like in tribal, I remember going to see the Pope in France, doing that whole thing when I was in like Christian school, and I was an altar boy myself. My parents are very Catholic, right? So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm well aware of tribal mindsets, but I think that's why I'm so like kind of open to them too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. When there's so many religions going on these days, right? You can be in the pro-mask religion, you can be in the
Yeah.
anti-COVID religion, you can be in the fucking 5G caused Bill Gates to whatever. You know what I mean? There's so many religions out there now, but I don't know. There's a part of me that's always like I understand that in a way, just because, well, not just because that's what I grew up in, but also like obviously Haidt and Tversky and all these books help me understand all this. Yeah, we're pretty much like, yeah, we're the same humans that we were when we were around 100,000 years ago. We haven't updated our software at all. We're just, we're still prone to biases and tribalness, and we just
Yeah, exactly.
stories now. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one thing that like we were talking about, that is great about people from mixed mental arts, because like you and I are like because we've read all of those books, we understand that people are so tribal, so we try to like we tend to have more of a kind of balanced perspective when people get all like radical and tribal about stuff, because we understand why that's happening. And like, again, like I said, though, that doesn't mean that we're immune to it. Like, I still get that way sometimes too, but if it's easier to avoid that kind of thing if you know kind of why that sort of thing happens, right?
Yeah, and it's easier to know when you can mix some of the two together. Like we're talking about tribalism, which you could associate with Jonathan Haidt and Rachel's Mind and all that kind of stuff. But also there's tribalism within your Dunbar number too, which that brings up Robin Dunbar's. So you can amalgamate those two books together, and both of those ideas become like, which Hunter always talked about, idea sex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, if you're aware of that 150 and that tribalness between that 150 with most people, it just it opens up so many doors to how people think and interact, right? Like, like I'm always like, again, my parents are like super religious, but that makes sense to me because everybody they grew up around with them, brothers and sisters, are also religious as well, right? They hang out with people that are priests and that are also religious. So everybody in their 150 Dunbar number is all religious. So, there's always, that silo that people get sucked into where it's just, you're just hearing ideas back and forth with, they love Bishop Barron. That's their
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. He's like the new, he's like the Jordan. Well,
he's like even more theological Jordan Peterson kind of.
Yeah. He's an actual bishop.
Specifically Catholic version, right?
Yeah, and I've watched a few of his podcasts. I got nothing against him. Ultimately.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. I think I've seen him in a few podcasts. One was with Jordan Peterson, and I think I saw like a few with other people.
Yeah, he's been on a few. I think he was on Dave Rubin too, if I'm not mistaken, like way back in the day. I remember seeing that and being like, "Whoa, he's on Dave Rubin's show? That's weird." But yeah, anyway, Bishop Barron is like their guy, right? So yeah, again, if you mix Dunbar number again with tribalism, then you get understanding of how people get like, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's an interesting thinker. You just made me think about how I thought it was interesting because since I'm not a militant atheist anymore, and I'm actually like I've become interested in investigating religious and theological ideas just because they're interesting to me. I've also like talked with my mom about her religious beliefs sometimes, and both of my parents are ordained ministers, but my mom's religion is like, it's so unusual compared to most Christians. And it's interesting. I was talking with her, like I think maybe a few weeks ago, and I didn't even know this until recently. Or I guess her views have evolved and changed over the years. But she goes to a Christian church. But she was talking about how even though she goes to a Christian church, she does that mostly for the community, which a lot of people probably do. And she said, she wouldn't even though she does go to a Christian church, she wouldn't necessarily actually call herself Christian, and maybe not even necessarily religious. She believes in God, and she said she would call herself spiritual, but not necessarily even religious, let alone Christian. Because she doesn't like all the connotations, like the negative connotations, whether they're negative or positive, that people assume about you if you say that you're Christian or you say that you're religious or something like that. Like assume that she's pro-life, or that she's conservative or something like that, and she's politically like super progressive. And so I think that's really interesting, especially since she's an ordained minister.
Interesting, but you're so right, man. I mean, community, when you said that, it was just like bing, because that's what it is, right? It's like, we're very, again, back to Dunbar number, and we love to be we love to be accepted by a community. We like to be, and religion provides like such a sense of community, and like a sense of community where you're doing like, Yeah, I mean, I was the same as you. I can remember being a militant atheist and reading Sam Harris and bringing all that material to my mom and being like, "What the fuck? This guy is like amazing. Read this shit. You know, he knows what he's talking about." And then
Read this shit. Why are you religious? You're harming the
hi,
world.
hi, Jesus, Sam Harris. Hello, this is so, you know. But now I look back at that and I think that it was so low hanging fruit thinking. You know what I mean? It was just like, yeah, I wasn't thinking about how people you know, are getting religious mindsets and sense of community and how this is so much bigger than just like, you know, but yeah, I have nothing against religious tribalness. And ultimately, man, I'm not gonna lie, like my parents, you know, they're religious and but they've done way more for their community than I have done. You know what I mean? My dad's like
Hmm.
giving bags of used clothing to the poor on Sundays, right? And I'm not doing that shit. So who the fuck am I to say that
Yeah,
religion's stupid? Or and a lot of religious people are like that, man. They're giving to their community.
yeah.
They're like, you
That's
know,
that's one of the most valuable lessons I learned from changing my mind about religion. That like any type of ideology, well, as Jonathan Haidt says, like politics, um, religion is a tool. You can use it for good things or bad things. It's the same way. It's the same way that someone who's a conservative or a liberal is not automatically a good or bad person, and there's a hell of a lot of variation in terms of what this definition means. Like that's another thing that I've learned so much about too. There's so many different ways that people can be a Christian, and so many different types of beliefs they have. And I've been learning a lot, like recently and over the past few years or so too, about how like some interesting definitions of God that I never heard of before and are actually really fascinating. I still don't believe them, but I think they're way more interesting than the typical example of God and religion that militant atheists put up as like these stereotypes that when you talk to religious people, not that many people actually share those beliefs anyway.
yeah, yeah. No, I think there's, yeah, like sometimes, I don't know. Religion is like a lot of things. There's a lot of like positives to it. Obviously, the negatives. If we were talking about the institutionalization of religious and how priests have, you know, molested altar boys over, you know, and this is like an ongoing thing. That's obviously a huge negative. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, unfortunately, I was talking about this with my mom the other day. Like Christ Catholicism or the Catholic Church in Canada is really looked upon negative right now, especially, you know, we've all these native indigenous children that they found. Um,
Oh
the,
yeah, the whole like residential schools thing
yeah, but they're like
definitely.
they used to be Catholic schools, right, or whatever, right? So like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this has looked really, you know, like, yeah, if you're religious right now, you're looked upon in society, and that makes sense to me because I'm old enough to remember. Like, I think the culture has changed dramatically over the past like 20 years, right? So, do you remember when Sinead O'Connor was on Saturday Night Live and she ripped up the Pope in the 90s? Do you remember hearing about that?
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So back then, like, here's a girl that went on Saturday Night Live. She ripped up this picture of the Pope, and like she was canceled pretty much after that, right? Like she had a
Mm-hmm.
fucking #1 album and then you never heard of her again. And it's not like she became
Mm-hmm.
a shitty artist. This woman's put out like some pretty good albums after that. It just was never promoted or heard of because she was pretty much canceled after that Saturday Night Live event. Fast forward to like 2021, and if somebody were to go on Saturday Night Live and rip up a picture of the Pope right now, they would probably be celebrated, right?
Yeah, like no one would care other
Nobody
than
would
like,
care, right? And
yeah.
that's only like, what is that? Like that's 20, 30 years, not even, right? So like the
Mm-hmm.
culture shift dramatically over the past 20 years where like people that are religious are now seen in a negative light more so than they were, you know, like we're more of a secular society than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, it's yeah, I just for me, I'm just like, I don't know. I've always been the guy that's like, I'm fucking stupid. This is what I chalk it up to. I don't know. If there's a God, awesome. If there's not a God, awesome. I'm just not
Yeah.
smart enough to know. That's how I
That's
chalk it up to.
That's a like this is another way that my views on religion have changed. I posted this on social media the other day. I love the way that the pragmatist philosopher, pragmatist atheist philosopher Richard Rorty answers the question of whether God exists. He says, "Who cares?" His point is that whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't really have that much of an effect on most people's lives. If if I knew objectively that God exists, I don't think I would really live my life that differently. And hopefully, for most Christians, like their religious belief does not depend on the existence of God needing to be proved to them or anything like that.
Yeah. But I think if I think two things could be true there. I think if you knew God existed, I think that you would probably take the Jordan Peterson route and act as if God existed. You know, if you knew that, like, for example, Jesus was actually real and he lived, and when I died, I get a choice to go to the pearly gates or I'm going down to see Lucifer in hell, right? I think that you would actually try to be a better person in life, or a majority of people would if you were to do this by statistics. The problem
Mm-hmm.
is we don't know, and that goes back to who cares, right? What you said earlier.
Yeah.
Is like, until we know, we should just be like, I'm good not knowing. And
That's another way that my mind has changed too. I don't have to know.
yeah,
I
I
just
don't, yeah, like I don't know about splitting atoms, or, you know, I don't even know what half of the particles, or sorry, what half of the chemicals are on the periodic table, right? There's just some shit in life I don't know. There's some shit in life that is just so beyond me. I can't think like 8 dimensionally or whatever, or I
Mhm.
don't know about, you know, fusion. What's that shit that's fucking really,
Nuclear fusion
yeah,
or
I don't know, nuclear fusion. There's just some shit you don't know about in life, right? Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know about ballet dancing, but I don't know what God is, or, you know what I mean?
Mhm. That's why
I
it's so interesting to me to learn about different ways that people have thought about God. One that I made a video about is this idea of an immanent God, which is a God that is it's not omnipotent or omnipresent or any of those things. It's a God that can be changed as much as humans are changed by God, and it's not an all-powerful God. Um, I just think that's a way more interesting way of looking at God than this like magic man in the sky. And then there's I think that comes from this philosopher Deleuze, who I like, who talked about Alfred North Whitehead's. Oh wait, no, that idea came from Alfred North Whitehead, who is kind of like a theologian, and he coined this concept called process theology, where the idea is that God is like constantly evolving and changing, and humans are having an impact on this, which I think is really interesting. And then there's also Spinoza's idea of God, which I made about a video about recently related to the Matrix, because I think because the Matrix explores this idea that everything is one, especially in if you look at the whole trilogy. That like I talk about how Smith and Neo are like opposites, but they're essential aspects of the same thing, because the only way that Neo can defeat Smith and bring peace between the humans and machines is by surrendering himself to Smith and unifying good and evil, and thus unifying the humans and the evil AI overlords. And so it's related to Spinoza's idea that everything is God. There is only one substance, and the only substance that exists is God, and everything is a part of God. But people called him an atheist Christian because when his concept of God, by his concept of God, he just means basically everything that exists in the universe. So you could substitute the word God for the universe. He's not saying that there's this eternal, external, creative God that just created the universe and is always watching and controlling things. It's just the universe itself.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, I do think there's something to be said about the presence of a God, though. And even if it was like I don't know if you've been paying attention to all this alien shit that's been going on.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Actually,
much like,
Dusty and I are going to do a podcast about that on Sunday.
oh fuck.
Hey, do you want to join it?
Yeah, I'm in. Sign me
Cool.
up.
Cool.
All right. Yeah, let me know when that is. I'll be down. I'm super into the alien shit. Well, like any kind of nerdy stuff. But let's say, like, for example, from what I gather so far is like Commander Favor, all these guys, what the Pentagon has released so far is there's just like these capsule like things. They go in, sometimes they go in the water. I don't know. They seem to me like probes or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
maybe it is like a probe from another planet and an alien is kind of like aliens are. I know I'm going really conspiratorial here.
No.
I'm
Go
going
ahead.
Alex.
Go.
Bear with me. I'm going Alex Jones for a minute. But like aliens are like God, right? So because it's also weird to me if you think about it. Like the religion is huge within human beings. Everybody's programmed with a religious mindset, and sometimes that goes into like the Catholicism, bucket. Sometimes that goes into the Judaism. Sometimes that's in Islam. Sometimes that's in the fucking, the chocolate. I love chocolate so much. Or sometimes it's fucking comic books or whatever. Or sometimes it's like me for like music, right? Everybody has their like religion, and it seems to be like a main staple throughout all of human history, right? We've always been like a religious human kind of, even if you're atheist, that's a religion in itself, right? So it's also weird to me as a collective conscious that we all can talk about God or know about some kind of God in a way, right? So there's something ingrained in us that maybe that was from years 200,000 or a million years ago when aliens were here, and we remember it from there, and it was never recorded in text and passed down. I don't know. There's some. Yeah. I'm going really crazy here, but
it relates to like what specifically Jonathan Haidt and David Sloan Wilson and Joe Henrich's argument for the evolution, the selection of religion through the culture and the cultural evolution of religion through group selection, and that's why religion is stuck around, because it's good for binding groups together and getting this sense of unity within a group. And like it's interesting because you were just talking about that, and how like I was thinking about how since we were just talking about aliens, that applies to aliens too. Like some people are definitely religious about aliens. Like some people believe all of the alien stories.
Oh yeah, 100%. Some people go so far that they not make up. They feel like they've seen aliens, and you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they feel like they've been abducted by aliens, and I don't know. There's some crazy stories. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you and Dusty and I will sure talk a lot more about that on Sunday. That'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll open up that rabbit hole on Sunday, because that could be a whole. Yeah, that's a whole podcast in itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll be talking for a few hours or so here now. I think we talked about everything we were originally going to talk about, plus a million other subjects. But I like how you said they do kind of all relate back to the main theme of tribalism, basically, and how there's this politicization of everything and like religious way of looking at things too. So I think that's true. We basically talked about a whole bunch of subjects related to that theme. So yeah, thanks for talking, man, and always fun. And I'll say what I say at the end of my episodes here, and then you can give any last words or plugs or anything there. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching another Mindgasms podcast. We enjoyed us talking about foreign policy issues and relating that to tribalism and religious thinking and politicization and all of those other topics related to that. And look forward to Chris and Dusty and I are going to do a podcast about aliens and UFOs on Sunday with the recent New York Times story acknowledging the existence of technology from out of this world, and how the different ways that people see that. They can go from thinking it might be like drones that we don't know how they were made, anywhere from that to aliens, bro. Aliens kidnapped me and probed me, and all that, that kind of stuff. So yeah, thanks again. Look forward to that. Thanks again to everyone for watching. Thanks. Please subscribe, hit the like button, hit that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. I'm also, we were talking about Jordan Peterson. I'm also working on another Jordan Peterson video, because I'm doing one video for each of his 12 rules in his new book, Beyond Order. So I'm going to do that on Rule 2 probably next week. And also thanks so much, especially to those of you who give me money on Patreon, and I'll put the link for that in the description of this video, as I always do. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. And feel the tribalism and the religion and the politicization of everything. Plus aliens, bro.
Aliens, bro.
All right. Anything else to say before we end it there?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Styles, Styeieles, or just type in Christopher James, should show up. And I got a music video that's hopefully coming out soon.
Yeah, let me know when that happens.
Yeah, we'll do. And you'll see me on Sunday when we talk about aliens, bro.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thanks again, man. And thanks again to everyone, and adios until next time.